So in Chovos halevovos, Duties of the Heart, by Rabbeinu ibn bacheya by Rabbeinu bacheya ibn pekuda, chapter 5, we know, while humans can endeavor to accumulate gold and silver and thus improve their position, their actual needs cannot be satisfied by it. For when one's thirsty and hungry and wants food or water, abundant gold, silver won't avail him or cure his lacking. And if someone has suffering, pain in any of his limbs, silver or gold won't cure him, even though there are some minerals largely used for medicinal purposes. Few individuals accept large amounts of these precious metals. The majority of mankind have but little of them. If all human beings had them in abundance, they couldn't use them as a medium for obtaining what they desire. Some people have much, some have little. They're precious from one point of view and of little account from another because they're intrinsically useless. Just a second. Okay. What's needed is provided. What's needed in abundance is available in abundance. For example, the air that is breathed, since we cannot possibly exist without air for any length of time. The Creator also provided that at no time and in no place shall human being be deprived of it. And since human beings, while also needing water, can exist without it for a longer period of time than they can without air, the Creator distributed it over the entire surface of the earth, collecting it, however, in particular places, to which creatures go and from which they're not excluded. But such places where water is collected are not found everywhere, as in the case of air. Water has to be bought by money by some people. This is not the case with air. Water is more readily obtained by some than others. Air exists for all and is obtained by all equally and in the same way. Food also is a necessity by which, however, we can abstain and for which we can find a substitute for a longer time than is possible in regard to air or water. Hence, food is scarcer and harder to procure than water, but normally it's abundant, and human beings are not deprived of it altogether. So, too, with regard to garments of skin, wool, and vegetable fiber, substitutes for some of those can be more easily obtained than in the case of food, and clothes take time to make up. The reason being that for a short period of time, a person can dispense with a new supply of clothing, content himself with a scanty wardrobe for a longer period than he can with a small supply of food. Regarding precious stones, gold and silver and other minerals are essentially little needed. Their occasional use is due to convention. Hence, a smaller quantity of these matters is found among a multitude of human beings than of the food possessed by a single individual, because a human being can do without those things. Hayom, which is a daily reader of Shabbos, Sara 5785. This would be written down by the Lubavitcher rebbe, compiled from the 7th Lubavitcher rebbe, compiled from the 6th. So it's the being who I am, I being who I am, and hence by definition unknowable, the one who's hidden and concealed from even the highest emanated beings and clothed in his essence. We call it atzmus. In numerous self-screening contractions, we call it symptom, in order to radiate forth the emanated beings, ne'etzalim, i.e. the beings in the world of Etzilus, and to produce the created beings, nivarim, i.e. the beings in the world of Bria, including seraphim, which are angels in the world of Bria, as well as chayos, which are angels in the world of Beria and Yetzira, and ofanim, which are angels in and worlds beyond number, the angels in the higher spiritual stratum of the world of Asiya. Moreover, with an infinite number of contractions, the I, Anochi, made the earth, this physical world, which is the lower physical stratum of the world of Asiya. These are the four Kabbalistic worlds, and created man upon it. Man is the ultimate purpose of creation. The gematria I created, Barati, 613, which is also equal to the total number of the mitzvahs, 613, which are the ultimate purpose of man. Ways of divine expression in the world. I want to talk about the word mashpia. This is what I was learning about. I wrote this about 6 months ago, but, probably all my life and probably forever we'll all be learning about mashpia. Means hashpa'ah, like the receiver, the one who's like radiating, and then the one who's like receiving. Hashpa'ah is like flow, like shefa is the flow, so to receive, like the transmission, like. So you would say the man is the giver and the woman's the receiver. You'd say he's the one who's the hashpa'ah and he's the mashpia, she's the hashpa'ah. Or the mother is the mashpia and the kid is the hashpa'ah. Or like we know with, you need a mentor. Or even in recovery, sometimes they call it a sponsor. So the strength of being a mashpia is that you don't have to matter to anyone. You melt away alone, not connected to people, just drifting off as my own personal beingness. I was thinking about what is the reason not to be the one who's always getting from, but rather the giver. It can be lonely being special and interesting because you can't hide in the background. People automatically pay attention. So actually being invisible is, so to be invisible you have to isolate sometimes. Also this idea that, you brainstorm, reframe, focus, kind of like maybe we would say problem solving. So you're using those skills and you have to really be constructive with your criticism. People cope the best that they can. And also, like, you can't be destructive. Sometimes people are telling me what they need to hear, and also, basically the person could be telling me, and I have to be able to be okay with that, what they need to hear, just being the one that is giving them even their own words. And we cannot control, also we have to remember, we can't control the video cameras, which is the brain and the eyes of another person, and what they desire, what they fantasize about. And being in recovery, there's always more to become and deeper healing possible. It's like a protection in the sense that there's always more. There's this couple. I want to talk about grief from some recent wisdom that I learned from a talk with a woman named Shayni Stewart. That grief can include anger that complicates it because the grief is correlated in intensity and magnitude with the love for the lost, what we lost. Also, unpacking can require the space and surface area to take the things out, find a place for it. Some emotionally, some physically, and then of course, and maybe return or let go of these things that you're like taking out, and then you might reorder. The major issue, like she and I were talking about, like grief. Let's say something that's like this borderline personality disorder. It's like there's almost this constant sort of grieving because. It's like people during the mania, they don't sleep enough. Within 2 to 4 days, it starts to cause psychosis, which could even look like delusions, hallucinations, obsessions, compulsions. Basically, the sleep deficit adds up. Each day, the toll is exponential rather than additive. If the person's only sleeping 4 hours a night, it could cause the person some sleep deficit, but it could cause the person to strain to a point that after a few nights, the 4 hours missing, it translates almost to like 8 hours because after a few more nights, it's like 16 hours missing because the pushing, despite exhaustion, requires even much more energy. When someone has sleep deficit adding up versus, collapse, even a few weeks could seem asymmetrical, but it makes sense. Like the person, once they actually lose it, is totally down. And this is like because of the cycle already being in place where they feel shame for having been collapsed, and then after the collapse, and then so they end up not being able to do anything for the loop duration other than rest and recuperate before then they try again to overdo it. And sometimes to drink coffee to stay awake and so on. I want to share some things I learned from ACA meetings. There's adult children of alcoholics or adult children of dysfunctional families, and I find these ACA meetings, I go about once a week, very comforting because I'm not alone and there's words for this. There's tons of meetings. And I was learning about why I tried not to love anyone. A lot of it had to do with my mother's anxiety, my father's avoidance. And I learned about, what they call para-alcoholism, which is where so let's say your parents were dysfunctional. It's like, or because they were drinking, or they were addicts, or rageaholics. You don't even need a drink, but you could be doing what they're doing. For example, fearful and controlling home where there's no trust, or children are not talking freely about feelings. Could be, or children are not allowed to talk about feelings at all. There's dismissiveness, or called selfish or too sensitive. There's enmeshment, alienation, transference, internalization of the parents' expressions and experience, resentment for not being removed or protected from the dysfunction. And ironically, we might even resent the parent that did not engage in the addiction even more than the one that did. And the black and white thinking, the self-hate and rage and self-doubting reality, shaming and fear can all be inherited if exists in a parent. God forbid. Even after a divorce, the parent that is an addict might be gone, but there's still the remaining patterns and dynamics. This is very validating, I found, because my parents got divorced when I was 11, approximately, and, there was a lot of, addictive, and there was all these things going on in my home, even if my father was not exactly an alcoholic, or my mother. And I finally felt like, at the time of writing this was when I was 33, to leave the shell, I was in a shell, and I was breaking out. I didn't want to die or asphyxiate from being trapped in there. And I felt I was ready to stop orbiting around the pieces of the broken shell as well. I deserve my me, the real inner being, I'm worthy. Even though shell pieces had protected me, it was like the exhausting, draining, uncomfortable dynamics of navigating the social and romantic intimacy and boundaries that I had at the time, with a belief that I'll be infected by all the things I was by my parents. Basically, intimacy became something that I thought was always going to be dysfunctional. So I started also outgrowing the need to use those shards, those pieces of my outer self that broke off, as a weapon from the shield of protection to keep me from getting hurt or attacked or threatened. And, inspired by another ACA meeting, I learned why I didn't have safe boundaries. Safe. Because I kept fleeing and returning to danger and healthfulness, almost like this time I'll be prepared, right? I kept putting myself at risk and not leaving the scary situation. Could be showing weakness in the home meant I'd be an easier target later. So I had to really pretend I was so tough on the outside just to stay safe. And even this go-to stance, pretending I wasn't nervous and bullyable and that I'm tough and strong instead, I ended up investing in denying my real feelings that really are just trying to keep me safe, in the end of the day. Rashi is a commentator, and I want to share a few things. Rashi and on So Rashi, who's a commentator, says on devarim, Deuteronomy, in the portion of eikev, chapter 11, verse 13, and also this is from sukkah 46b, hearkening to Hashem's commandments was said twice. If hearken, you'll hearken, because we need a review, taking care to understand, and we'll learn new learning on what we already learned. Will give us fresh Torah insights in what we already know. Plus, if someone neglects their studies, he'll forget what he learned. If you forsake me for one day, I'll forsake you for two. This is said by the sages, the ancients of the Torah. So today we're really reviewing the wisdom of deprivation and abundance. We've talked about these things before. Rashi also says on the previous verse, chapter 11, verse 12, also from portion of eikev in Deuteronomy, devarim, that God is omniscient and oversees the entire world, but his principal attention is focused on Eretz Yisrael, the Holy Land of Israel, and only afterwards does he bless the rest of the world, which is secondary. Or Hachaim, on the same pasuk, says, when Israel's in exile from its land, or when it's deserving of God's blessing, the entire world suffers. And das tevunas on this pasuk says, the pasuk means verse. The sages relate marvelous anecdotes regarding the agricultural riches of the land. Since the exile, not only has the land become impoverished, but the entire world has become poorer. And now I want to share from this couple, Rabbi yechezkel, Shimon, Gutfreund, and Mrs. Shulamis, yehudis, Gutfreund. And you can find them their channel. It's called Faith and Calm on YouTube. And So Rabbi yechezkel, Shimon Gutfreund said the shell, the klipa, is a protector. It's not the basically, eventually, we have to leave it, or we can rot and get suffocated. The purpose eventually is for the chick to leave the fruit peel to be removed, because in the fruit's flesh are the seeds, and the nut and seed outer layers. They need to dissolve for it to be, surrected, not surrected as a new iteration of that species lineage members. They will mature to develop their own seeds. If we get scared, we develop these bubbles around us. They prevent us from transforming and growing. And this is like the nut, the egg, the fruit peel, the seed. They prevent us from transforming, growing, being exposed to threat. We might call it like a sensitivity. This false reality might be held in place by the peel, the shell, that would all flop and crumble if the shell and peel was removed. But because the shell was never the purpose, though, the shell was just supposed to protect what was inside. Not being appearance based, not caring more about the external more than the internal, and not being so arrogant to think that the outer self is anything other than a shell, a peel, which is not alone by itself that which has power or usefulness or significance. And so although the shell and peel is eventually removed, its significance and power comes from how the inner contents need protection for a certain amount of time, or at least until the inner must connect and grow and interact beyond what it had so far been able to while it had been inside the peel shell. And his wife, Mr. Shulamis, this Gutfreund, says in the beginning, so they have a YouTube channel, Faith and Calm, and she says these 4 points in the beginning of every single one of her. So they share. She goes, like they share the videos. They split it, I think almost always. Maybe once or twice it was just one or the other. But anyway, she says 4 things in every video. She says, we're in a remarkable time, entering the days of Mashiach, where things are happening and moving. She says, we're handpicked to be in this time because we each have a crucial, important role to play, not just because we're stage props. And 3, she says, we have the mitzvos, remember we mentioned the 613 mitzvos, as our power tools, and the Torah as our guidebook. And 4, the fastest way to speed up Mashiach, the messianic consciousness, and the redemption is to learn about Mashiach. And so I'll stop here, and I wish you all the best. I wish you good, a lot of good, and just like a holy good vortex, a holy good aura.